Hello everyone. First of all, I just want to thank you for all the support you have shown me in the previous videos, and if you're enjoying these videos and you're finding it useful, then I highly recommend enrolling into my Tailwind CSS course. So far we have over 15,000 students, so if you want to enroll into this course, you can find the link in the description.
Alright guys, so now we're going to be working on the self-introduction section. So let's open a div right after, so we have the anchors and we have two divs after it. After those two divs, we'll open a new div. Now, for this div, we're going to be using relative positioning. We also want the index to be so the z-axis index is going to be 10. That way it will be above the, it will be above the image, the background image, because the background image is Z0 and Z10 is basically higher than Z0, so it will be on top of it. That way we have that nice effect where the self-promotion will be centered in, and the navigation will be on the bottom and the background will be on the top. When we have that done, we would have a really nice front page. I mean, you've seen the video that I illustrated at the start of the project, pretty much here. So let's get started with this div. So again, after Z20, we're going to have background. Sorry, Z10. After that, we're going to use flex, and we will set the minimum height of minimum height will be the height of the screen. Now the height will be automatic, so that this div will basically match the content of this div. So whatever the content is, it will basically adjust the height accordingly. And we want to use justify center and item center so that we can position the elements inside the self promotion to center it. Now inside this div, we're going to have a new div that will basically hold the content of this self promotion section, and this div is going to be relatively positioned, so we'll use relative class, and then we'll use max width for Excel. Now inside this, we're going to have another div, and this div is going to basically have a nice gradient effect. So we're going to like, this is going to have a gradient effect. We're going to have two colors, one primary and one secondary, and we will have the gradient going from primary to secondary. Now we're going to use absolute positioning for this one, and we will set the index to 10, Z10, and that way it will also be above the background, but it wouldn't be above the main parent. But anyway, so then we'll set inset 0. What inset 0 does is that that we have those top, left and right, bottom, we have those classes, so we can do top 0 and that will make it stick to 0. Sorry, it will make it stick to the top. If we do left 0, it will make the div elements stuck to the left. And if we do we'll do right 0, it will make it stuck to the right. So it means that we have 0 pixels from the right or 0 pixels from the left. What inset 0 does, it does all of them together. So it does top 0, left 0, right 0, bottom 0, and that will basically stick this element, and it would remove any It would remove any spacing between this element and the parent element. Now we want to use a gradient, so we'll do background gradient, so BG gradient, and we want this gradient to be from left to right, so we will do BG gradient 2R. And we're going to have two colors, so we're going to have a primary and a secondary color. So we will need to have a class to use this from primary. We're going to have a custom from primary, so we're going to use from primary to secondary, these two classes, which we will actually implement ourselves. We'll override these classes from Tailwind, and we will do they're going to be custom classes, and we will also use shadow large to give it a shadow, and we will do apply a transformation to this, because what this does, this div is responsible for having the gradient, and also if you look back at the first design that I showed you, you can see that the gradient is a bit skewed and it's rotated, and so it has that nice effect that I showed you. So we're going to apply this using transform. So we use transform skew y6. So that will basically kind of bend the card in a way. It will skew it vertically. So transform skew y6, and then we'll do, for small devices, we'll do skew vertical 0. That way we don't really skew it, I think, on small devices. And on small devices we also want to minus rotate it 6. We want to do minus rotate 6. And also for small devices we also want to give it a rounded of large, so that way it has a bigger border radius. And by using this transformation, basically it will we will have a nice effect with this card, and it will have would give it that cool effect that you have seen. So now let's set up these two classes to set up the gradient. So we go in the style, and then we have these two CSS classes that we're going to be using from primary, which will basically use a gradient from a specific color that we will be using. So you are free to use the specific Tailwind classes that I have shown you in the introduction. I mean, you can go on the Tailwind documentation and it shows you like how to use it. Basically, just you can choose whatever color you want to another, like from this color to another color. So we have done this beautiful gradient skewed div. Now after it, I'm going to have a new div. Now this div is actually going to hold the content of our self-promotion or self-introduction, and this div is going to be relatively positioned. And we will use Z20 because we done Z10 for the root div and the gradient div. Now we want to have a div element above both of these. So because the other ones are Z10, this is Z20. We're using Z20 now, so that it's on top of them. And we want to have the background white using BG white. And for medium devices, we will use flex, and we will use justify between. So that's basically, so just to explain what justify between does, basically the elements will have equal amount of spaces between them. So all the elements inside this card will have equal spacing between them. Now after that, we're going to be using P12, and this will give a padding on all sides of the, so we'll have a 12 padding on all sides, and then we'll use shadow large to give it a shadow, and we'll use rounded large as well to give it a border radius. And then we want to make this width full, so we'll use width full. Basically we'll use W full, and for the maximum width we want it to be 4XL, so max width 4XL. That way it's basically it's like floating on top of all the other cards. Now inside this div that we have just done, we're going to have a new div which will basically hold the contents. So just to correct myself, the div that we have just finished, that was actually a card div. As you can see, we've done the Z20 and the BG white. That gives it a nice card design. And after it, we're going to have a new div that will be a container for the actual content of the self-promotion or self-introduction. So before we continue, let's go to Google Chrome and let's see how it's looking so far. Let's refresh. Now we will have the container for the, so we'll have the container for the content of this self-promotion card. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's open a new div inside this one, and so this div is going to be inside the card that I have just mentioned. Now for this card, which will be a container for the content of the self-promotion, self-introduction contents. So basically we're going to use flex for small devices, and for other devices we'll use flex col, so it will be a column. And we want to have spacing between the elements, so we'll use justify between. And we also want to have a vertical spacing of 6, so we'll use space y 6, and a padding, a vertical padding of 6. So that's so basically we have padding on top and bottom. And for medium devices we want to have a padding right of 10. So the reason we have used space y 6 is because it will give spacing between the elements of 6, and padding y 6 will only give the top and bottom padding of 6 basically. So that's the difference between space y 6 and padding y 6. So now we can basically we can have a new div, a small div that will basically hold the H will basically have like an introduction. So let's go ahead and implement the introduction. So we're going to have a H2, and we're going to say hello, I am, and then after it we're going to have a H1, and we're going to say the name, which is Alex Jensen, and let's see how that looks. As you can see, it will be much bigger as well when we add the image and a paragraph as well. But let's just style up these H2 and H1, these two headings. So for this first one, let's make it large using text large, and let's see how that looks. And for the second one, let's use padding top 1, so that there's some padding between it and the first heading. And let's make it really big as well. Let's use text 5XL. And let's make it bold. Now let's see how that looks. Okay, that looks very nice. Now we want to make it a different color. So let's just do a dark shade of grey, so text grey 800. Okay, that looks good. Now after it, we're going to have a paragraph. So it's going to be a self-introduction. So the skills of yourself, or whatever you want to include over here. So you can say like, okay, I am a full stack web developer who crafts beautiful websites. So in this case, we'll write that. So actually, you do not need hello I am, because you already included it in the headings. Just right. Actually, yeah, we'll just use lorem ipsum. Let's see how that looks. Okay, beautiful. Now let's style this up. Let's make the text extra large, and let's see how that looks. Okay, that's better. And also we need to, yeah, let's do leading relaxed, so that there's more spacing between the lines. And let's add some more lorem ipsum as well. Now let's see how that looks. Okay, very nice. So now we're going to have a new div. So after this paragraph that we have just done, right after it is going to be a closing tag, and after the closing tag, we're going to have a new image tag. And for this image tag, again, we're going to be using just a profile picture. You're free to use the profile picture that we used, or you can basically use your own profile picture. So yeah. So now we're going to add in the URL that we want to use. You can basically take it from the text file if you want to as well, or you can just use yours. And so we're going to be doing that. And also we're going to be applying some classes. So let's use width 80 and rounded full. So it looks circular and it has a width of 80. And let's have a look. Let's see how that looks now. Okay, we need to definitely style it to make it go on the right. So let's use flex shrink 0 to stop it from shrinking. And let's see how that looks. We have an issue. That's because we have misplaced the paragraph. The paragraph is meant to be right under the div that contains the headings, and that's why, because we have a column, so that's why those two will be in a column. And then after this column, so this column is basically holding the paragraph and a div that basically holds the headings. So we want those to be in a column. So basically the paragraph goes under the div that is holding the headings. So make sure you put it that way. And then after the column div, we're going to have the image. That's where the image should be. And now let's see if that is actually working now.